Let's start with the 8% taxable Government of India bond. In these days of low interest rates, everybody complains about low interest rates. If you are not a senior citizen, 3 or 5 year bank deposits, you're lucky if you get 6.25% or 6.5%. Now the problem with this money is that when you are earning interest rates, there is one very important aspect of calculation of the interest rates that you should bear in mind. Let me give you an actual example. Just 1 or 2 days back, when I was reviewing a client's investment plan, there is a concept in personal financial planning called an emergency fund. And this lady requires an emergency fund of about 8 lakhs. And she thought that this emergency fund was covered by her bank fixed deposits, which are giving her 7% of interest. Some of them are little old bank fixed deposits, 7% of interest, and quite happy with that. So she said, I don't need an emergency fund, my money is here. The only problem is that her earnings are about 1 lakh rupees per month, which puts her into the 30.9% tax bracket. And when you take 7% and deduct 30.9% from this, if I'm not mistaken, the figure you get is something like 4.84%. Her eyes really opened when she realized that while on paper she may be earning 7%, because she's in the 30% tax bracket, she's actually earning this much. And then I told her that the bad news for you does not end there, because this is what we call the post-tax rate. There is one more very important concept called the real rate of return. And the real rate of return is the coupon rate. The coupon rate is what you get on the printed on the certificate, minus taxation, minus inflation, which is roughly 6% today. And then you come to a negative real rate of return of 1 point something else, which means the actual value of her 10 lakhs in the bank fixed deposit is being steadily depleted. So sometimes what we think is totally disconnected from reality. However, we also recognize that there is a section of society which, at least to some extent, requires to earn a regular return, especially retirees, certain people who cannot otherwise work. And fortunately for them, we have got an income tax, this basic tax exemption. Basic tax exemption of 2,50,000 rupees for normal people and 3 lakh rupees for senior citizens. Not only that, from here up to 5 lakh rupees. That is, if you are a non-senior citizen, 2,50,000 to 5. If you are a senior citizen, 3 lakh to 5. However you make the journey from these levels to the 5 lakh level, the tax rate today is 5% plus surcharge, which comes to 5.15%. Whatever taxable income you are earning, if you go and use it to fill this level up to 5 lakh rupees, tax is almost negligible. We need not worry about a 5.15%. Even in the old days when it was a 10% tax rate, we used to tell people don't worry too much about the 10% tax. Tax starts to bite once you hit the 20% and above levels. In the case of the lady I was talking to you about, her salary just does not fill this, pushes her into the 20% bracket and then virtually has pushed her into the 30% bracket. Of course, there are some adjustments to be made for ATC and other things, but if not today, tomorrow she will get a further increment and she'll very securely be in the 30.9% tax bracket. So in the case of her 7% bank deposit, it is not a 7% bank deposit. If somebody puts a chunk of money, let's say something like 20 lakhs, into a 7% bank deposit, earns 1.4 lakhs from it, and that 1.4 lakhs is falling here, there is no other taxable income, then the post-tax rate is also 7%. Then you have to worry only about inflation. You probably end up with a very small real rate of return. But once you have crossed this level, we have to be very, very careful. We have to look for tax efficient investments. We have to look for tax saving pretty actively. Now, in a scenario where non-senior citizens are getting 6.25 and 6.5 from the banks, and where even senior citizens are struggling to get 7%, the 8% taxable Government of India savings bond looks attractive. More attractive than this marginally is the 8.3% senior citizens savings scheme. But as we know, the SCSS is only for senior citizens. For the rest of us, if we want to earn a relatively higher rate, this is one of the options that could be considered, and therefore we are going to look at it very briefly. Now, individuals can invest in this either in their sole name or with a maximum of 2 additional joint holders. Most investments today are structured around a maximum of 3 joint holders. Non-resident Indians cannot invest in this. Hindu undivided families can invest. That is something useful to know because HUFs have been shut out from other investment avenues like small savings, PPF. Charitable institutions and universities can invest. The important thing here is charitable institutions and universities. Many of these charitable institutions need not worry about tax because they are exempt from income tax. They are exempt from income tax. So for them, when you don't have to worry about tax, the 8% bond is virtually tax-free. And it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Now, interest is payable half yearly. A lot of people who depend upon regular returns get used to quarterly payouts because the senior citizen savings scheme pays quarterly. Most bank deposits pay quarterly. But in my experience, if you manage your funds reasonably well, getting interest half yearly is not such a big disadvantage. It's a little inconvenient, but it's not such a big disadvantage. So that portion of it is fine. There is also there are 2 schemes, cumulative and non-cumulative. Cumulative interest is not paid to you. It is collected, reinvested and paid at the end. Non-cumulative, you have got these 2 dates of 1st February and 1st August. Now under the cumulative option, the maturity value of a 1000 rupee investment after 6 years would be 1601. And here I can give you my first piece of advice about the Government of India bond. Investing under the cumulative option would be the height of foolishness. Okay, for several reasons. Let's examine that. If someone needs a regular income and is willing to take the interest at 8% every 6 months, I can understand. What happens when you take the interest under the cumulative option? You have got 6 years of the life of the bond. Here you put 1000 rupees, here you get 1601. First point is, when you file your returns after 1 year, let us say the 1000 has become 1080 rupees. On this 80 rupees of income, you have to pay tax if you are in the tax bracket. Please note this. Now, when are you paying tax? Virtually when you receive financial year in which you receive the income. But have you received this income in your hand? No. There is a principle called accrued income. Under the principle of accrued income, you have to account for this notional interest, add it to your normal income and pay tax now, whereas you are going to get the interest 6 years later. Do you understand the implication here? You are paying tax in today's money, which is valuable. You are getting tax after interest after 5 or 6 years. That money has reduced in value because of inflation. This is the first reason why the cumulative option in this kind of things is foolishness of the highest order. Even if you argue that I have no tax to be paid at all, even after accruing for accrued interest, you are talking about a 6-year time horizon here. A 6-year time horizon is not for a bond. Okay, I'm not even saying it should be 100% in equity, but at least there should be something like a 50% allocation to equity. Minimum, at the minimum, a balanced fund, something like that. Okay, that's what we are looking for. So the very structure of the cumulative option, because the moment you say cumulative, that means I want my money to grow. When I want my money to grow, we are talking about growth investments. And definitely over a 6-year period, equity is a much better option than an 8% bond. And as your financial advisors will tell you, today we have got such beautiful mutual fund products, systematic transfer plans based on value averaging, which respond to the levels of the market. High degree of safety. If you go for a conservative systematic transfer plan, your degree of safety can be very high. It can also be calibrated to a great extent. So investing in something like this would be total foolishness. You're going to get inflation reduced money. You're going to pay tax, if you have to pay tax, in more valuable money. Second thing is there's a mismatch between time horizons. 6 years is more of an equity time horizon. Even a 60-40, 60 equity, 40 debt allocation would be fine, or a simple systematic transfer plan would be absolutely fine. So never go for the cumulative option here. It's okay for a few people who want a steady income from a safe source. Investment can be made in multiples of rupees 1,000 without any ceiling. Find it's flexible to that extent. Post-maturity interest will not be paid. I have no quarrel with this. If you allow your government bond to mature and you are careless about taking the money out, you have to pay the price by not getting interest after that. So we have to be alert. We have to know when our investments mature and we should see that they are taken out. Now the bonds can be held in the form of a certificate or in a demat account or a bond ledger account. Actually, this certificate is now almost done away with. It's a very easy form of holding. There is nothing to worry. You can hold it in the electronic form or as an extract from a bond ledger account. These are only processes. And the entity from which you buy it, these bonds are available in most banks, most leading banks. I don't know whether they are available in post offices, but they are also available with certain large broking houses. The bonds cannot be traded, gifted or transferred. These are not tradable bonds. These are directly from the Government of India to the individual or institutional bondholder through the RBI. The RBI is the final authority to issue these bonds. From 24th October 2008 onwards, the bonds can be pledged as collateral for obtaining loans from scheduled banks. So although you cannot trade them, you can use them as a security to obtain loans. Nomination facility is available for sole holders as well as joint holders, if all joint holders sign the nomination form. This is certainly a good aspect. There can be more than one nominee, but nominees can withdraw proceeds only upon maturity or at specified premature withdrawal dates and not on the death of the investor. Unfortunately, when we are dealing with the government, we run into the bureaucratic mindset, and the people who draft these rules have absolutely no idea about what investment is all about. So you have terribly investor unfriendly clauses like this. When somebody dies, the government appears to be unconcerned that the legal heirs may require the money immediately. There may be some kind of a crisis. Okay, here what the bond attempts to do is shut people out totally. It's only upon maturity, or there are some cumbersome specific maturity dates. I'll tell you about them a little later. But this is a very, very investor unfriendly measure. And there are several such investor unfriendly measures here. But generally in life, let me tell you, there is always a trade-off. There is no perfect investment. If the interest rate is higher, sometimes you have to pay a price elsewhere. The lesson we have to learn is, we have to also manage liquidity well in our normal life. Therefore, just because this is giving you a higher return, should not blindly go and put all money in a thing like this and shut yourself off liquidity. There are also other ways to manage it. Supposing you need a total of 25 lakhs in this kind of investments. You must have a little patience, take the trouble to get a lower rate somewhere else, but maybe put something like 5 lakh rupees per year in the bonds. So if you put 5 lakh rupees per year over a period of 5 years, you have 25 lakh invested. Now in the 6th year, the first years will mature. So you have a certain liquidity cycle. Every year, money is coming back to you. Okay, so these are the kind of things that a normal prudent investor would do. Either some portion only, which I can afford to block, I put into that, or I create a liquidity ladder, or any other sensible approach that helps to protect me against the lack of liquidity and very unfriendly clauses like this. The post-tax rate for investors in the 30.9% tax bracket is 5.53%. So not a very attractive avenue of investment if you are in the highest tax bracket. You have to look for more tax efficient avenues of investment. But it is a good avenue for regular returns depending upon the general interest rate environment. Just 2 years back, people would go to sleep when I spoke about these bonds. Why? Almost every bank was giving you 9%. And with the kind of liquidity that you have in the bank deposits, who would go for something like this? Today the situation is different. This interest rate has not changed. And if you invest in it now, for the life of the bond, it cannot be changed. However, the general interest rate having fallen to about 6.5%, suddenly these bonds are looking very, very attractive for people who need regular returns. There is one more advantage of these bonds. There is no cap on the investment you can make. It suits the religious and charitable trusts and institutions a lot, especially when they have the tax exemption. They can put crores of rupees here and get 8%. Whereas from a bank deposit, they would get 6.25 or 6.5. Similarly, for people who need a higher, safe, regular income, even something like the Senior Citizens Savings Scheme, which we probably saw in the last session, gives you a maximum of 8.3%. And it gives you returns of 8.3%, but there is a maximum of only 15 lakhs. So either single or joint, you can put say 15 lakhs. In the reverse order of names, you can put another 15 lakhs. But what if you need much more than that? What if you need much more than that? Even 30 lakhs invested will hardly give 18 or 20,000 per month. What if somebody needs 40 or 50,000 rupees of income per month? Then these bonds are a solution. These bonds are a solution. So the fact that there is no cap is good. This is exactly what I mean by a trade-off. There is no perfect investment scheme. You have got certain advantages, you have got certain disadvantages. You should be aware of both the advantages and the disadvantages. The second step you have to take is there some way by which I can protect myself from the disadvantages? I gave you that one or two examples, not putting everything, staggering the investments once a year. These are the kind of steps that you can take. The bonds are terrible where liquidity is concerned. Investors above 80 years of age can prematurely liquidate the bonds after 3 years. So there is no mercy. Even if you are 80 plus, you still have to wait for 3 years. Investors between 70 and 80 can prematurely liquidate after 4 years. Investors between 60 and 70 can liquidate the bonds after 5 years. Okay, so liquidity is horrible where these bonds are concerned. This is a 2013 amendment. In the case of joint holders, any one of them need to fulfill the age condition. If anyone has got these age brackets, okay, you can go for it. There is no premature encashment facility for non-senior citizen bond holders. So you get into it, you are there for 6 years. It's like prison. You remember the lyrics of Hotel California. We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Exactly. There's something like that. Redemption will be on the following interest payment due date, that is 1st August or 1st February after completion of the lock-in period. One more investor unfriendly measure. You are finished, let's say you are above 80, 3 years are over, you need the money desperately, maybe for medical treatment. But whenever you redeem it, your payment will come only on the next interest due date. So further lock-in. That's why I said where liquidity is concerned, someone without understanding human needs, the matching of investment needs to human needs, without any trace of humanity, some robot has drafted these laws. Unfortunately, a lot of robots work for various governments, including the Indian government. 50% of the last 6 months' interest will be recovered as penalty in case of premature encashment. This is the exact wording I've taken from here. It means only this much. In short, the bonds can be cashed at a penalty equal to 2% of the principal for non-cumulative bonds. So not only are they intent on shutting you out of liquidity, after that if you withdraw, you are still penalized. There's an average you can say of 2% that you have to pay. And whom are you penalizing? People below 60 can't get out of it. So there's no question of penalty. You are penalizing only people 60 and above. In short, you are penalizing senior citizens. Okay, this is the utter senselessness and callousness that you find in government. Okay, and the sad part is, a lot of senior citizens, they may be very disciplined long-term investors, but they cannot dictate, they have no control over when some calamity may strike, like a heart attack, like some other disease, and suddenly you need money. Therefore, don't be blindly misled by the 8% interest rate. Okay, liquidity is as important, if not more important, especially when we age. Those of you who have seen some of my other lectures, you know that there are 4 purposes of investment. We call it aims: appreciation, income, marketability, security. Appreciation is the growing of your money, like real estate values grow, stock values grow. Income, you earn income. You look for the highest possible income without compromising on safety. You also look for tax efficient income. Marketability is another word for liquidity. You try to be as liquid as possible. You try to be safe. Now, as you age, marketability and safety become more and more important. Okay, these become more important. You should be liquid. You do not know when you are going to need the money. When you need the money, you should be able to get the money. And the definition of liquidity is the conversion of an asset into cash with minimum loss of time and minimum loss of value. So here you have to pay a penalty. You withdraw, money will come only when the interest due date happens. 3 years, even an 80-year-old can't get out. Non-senior citizen cannot get out at all. And health emergencies can happen even to young people. So it is quite horrible on the liquidity front. There is also a stiff penalty for the cumulative option. Okay, so you have to be very, very careful about this. Partial premature encashment is not allowed. This is another problem. So you might have invested 15 lakhs. You may have a calamity now that needs only 3 lakhs. No, if this is your only source, you have to encash the entire 15 lakhs. Premature encashment dates for non-cumulative bonds will be 1st January and 1st July. And for cumulative bonds, 1st February and 1st August. Meaningless. Meaningless, you make a distinction between these two, but that's the way I told you the government works. Tax is deducted at source at 10% with effect from 1st February 2007 if interest paid or payable is rupees 10,000 or more during a financial year. I have no real quarrel with this. Tax deduction at source is not something we have to really be concerned about. It's not a loss. It is an early collection of tax, and whatever tax has been deducted can be adjusted against the final tax that you have to pay. So that is not a very big problem. Yes, I think that much is enough for the 8% Government of India taxable bond. What are the quick conclusions that we come to? In an era of low interest rates, the 8% Government of India bonds offer a facility for slightly higher interest. For some people, earning of this kind of a higher interest may make a difference to their lives. For such people, it can be suggested. But when you suggest the 8% bond, you have to bear in mind its numerous drawbacks. You're getting 8%. However, liquidity is horrible. There are penalties also when you come back. So either stagger your maturity periods or ensure that only a certain portion of your fixed income component is invested in the bonds. Don't blindly just look at the 8% and apply. That's what we generally do. Nobody reads the terms and conditions. And then we struggle if some kind of disaster strikes later.